Hey, once in a while, man, I'll come across a movie that when I could trust my instincts, I have to trust my instincts. And my instincts was pretty spot on with this one. This one's called The Watcher. And I got it up against my screen up here, man. This is a horror suspense. And this was filmed in Romania. Because, the whole time I was watching this, I was like, is this really in Romania? I said, boy, if this was filmed in the United States, they must have a really big... I know the United States has a lot of big plots and land. They could make things look like it's from a different country. But this was actually filmed in Romania. Because this woman is... she's an American, and her husband is from Romania, and I guess his mom was from Romania, and then she moved to the U.S. So, he just came back to his homeland because he got a job as an accountant, if I ain't mistaken. Or was he born in Romania and his mom? Well, anyway, his mom, yeah, he was a Romanian on his mom's side. And he moved back to Romania, and he got a job as an accountant. And I guess accountants make really good money because he got a job offer because he was living in New York. So he took his wife with him. But the whole time his wife, she's supporting him and stuff. So she moves to Romania with him, and then she's trying to learn Romanian language while she's there, and but she's having a hard time trying to understand people. So they move in this apartment, and most people are speaking Romanian, and she's trying to learn Romanian. She knows a little bit of it, but not very much. So her husband, they're a young couple, nice looking couple too, by the way. And so when she moves in, she gets all settled in, and it's a nice apartment and stuff. And this is, he's got this new job, man. An accountant, man, because they moved from New York to Romania. So, he's going to go to work. But the first night, they got on the couch and started making out. And they was getting ready to make love and stuff like that. And then, they got this big, the apartments over there got these big windows and stuff. And when the next apartment across the street, you can actually look down. But, they all can look at each other. But, I don't think anybody does anything crazy. Just, when you look out the mirror, you just look across the street and see your neighbor across the mirror. Because that's how these apartments was built. Nice apartments, though, but they were, they were like mid-class apartments, look like to me. But they weren't run down or anything like that. But, it was pretty cool how they filmed this because, she's this young, I'll read the plot synopsis and we go from there. As a serial killer stalks the city, Julia, a young actress who just moved to town with her boyfriend, notices a mysterious stranger watching her from across the street in this terrifying thriller. This got an 87% Rotten Tomato. Julia is played by Makia Monroe, and Francis is her husband, played by Carl Glinsman. The Watcher, which is the guy that was the bad guy, was played by Bern Gorman. And man, he did a good job looking all creepy the way he did. But anyway, she just looks out the window, and then she happened to see a shadowy figure looking out the window a little ways up, but she could never make the guy out. And then so he goes to work because he spends a lot of hours being an accountant, and he leaves her home a lot. So she's going around familiarizing with Romania and stuff. But she once in a while she's trying to speak Romanian, but she's trying to understand how to use Romanian and trying to interpret it. But at the same time, she has to ask a few people when she's out, do you speak English? Some of them's like, yeah, I speak English. What do you need? And then she'll talk to them and stuff when she'll ask for coffee. And she was trying to stop smoking cigarettes, but then when she figured out, she started noticing this guy was staring at her. But then, the next day, her and her husband come home, and he found her looking out. He found her looking out the window, and he says, "Is that what my wife does all day? Is stare out the window?" But here's the part that got me. One day when he went to work, she decided to go to this theater, and she went in this theater, man. And there was only a few people in there, and I was like, man, she's got to really be bored because she didn't have no job. So he must be making some good money. So she goes in this theater, starts watching this movie. But at the whole time, I'm like, did you pay for a ticket to go into this theater? And it's like they went and skipped through all that. But then she kept thinking that this guy was stalking her. Well, there was this, she looked over and seen a couple making out. And then she seen this old woman back there eating popcorn. Then she seen another guy. But then later on, this guy sits behind her and he starts breathing all kind of funny. He leans forward to her, and then she gets up and she goes out. And then she tries to explain it to her husband. As days go on, she started realizing. So she starts telling this guy that she figured was the one that was doing the stalking. But a day before that, there was a serial killer that chopped off some woman's head. And there was a guy that when they was out eating dinner with this couple, when they come home, there was police officers and everything blocking off the road because this woman got her head cut off. So the next day she gets up and she sees this on the news. She goes, hey, we walked past there and stuff. So then when they had another dinner date that come over to their house, and they're speaking Romanian, and then they're talking to her in English at the same time, but her husband's like, anyway, they was talking about, hey, did you hear about what happened last night and this thing? And they say, yeah, we walked by there the other day. So, they're thinking that, so the serial killer's still out there. So she's thinking it's that guy that's looking up at her. So this is how this movie's set up. So, to sum this up, her husband started doubting her. That because he's got this job, man, so he's got a lot of pressure on him because he's spending all these hours. Because the whole time I'm watching this movie, I'm like, man, he's leaving her at home quite a bit. She's always home by herself. And then she befriended this woman that was down a couple apartments down. And, her and that girl became friends. And then she decided to follow this guy that was stalking her. And then when her husband come home, her husband asked about, her husband would start doubting her. So he said, well, what happened? She goes, well, that guy up there waved at me because she said, screw it. She said, I'm going to find out this guy's staring at me or not. So she looked up, and then she waved. Then after that, he didn't wave. So she figured it was just a guy just looking off into space. So she looked away, and then she looked up, and then he waved back. And that's when she knew that he was actually watching her. Well, then when her husband come home, she told her husband was like, what do you want me to do about it? She goes, I want you to call the cops. He goes, really? And she goes, yeah. So they called the cops. The cops he said, well, cops was like, what did the cops, they were Romanian cops. So then he said, well, would you like me to go up there? Would you want me to go with you? And she goes, no. So then she said she wanted her husband to go with the cop to go up there. So he went up there, and she waited a while. So when they come back, her husband's like, maybe you're a little paranoid and stuff. And she was getting frustrated with him because he wasn't supporting her. So then that's how this went on. So then you fast forward a couple more, and then she went to, she ended up couldn't find her friend because when she followed this guy to this place, he was a janitor there. Come find out he was a janitor at this place that was a strip club. Well, when she went in the strip club, because she asked the guy that was at the door, do you speak English? He says, yeah. She goes, well, can I go in there? He says, sure. And then when she went in there, she was trying to figure out what he was doing in there. Come find out he was a janitor that cleaned up there, but it was a strip club with all these ladies that was dancing out. They were some good-looking ladies, nice bodies and stuff. They's dancing up against pole. And then that's when the girl that was her next-door neighbor that she had to drink with happened to knock on the window and say, hey, what are you doing here? And then, she went in there and talked to her and told her about how she think this guy's stalking her. And then, so anyway, that girl ends up getting killed and getting her head cut off. But she ends up having the cops come to her door before she found that her friend this is before her friend got her head cut off. Well, before that, the guy that she was following, he ended up getting the police to come to their house, and then she was in the living room getting ready for this date with her husband to go to this big shindig because he was an accountant at this big firm. And he said, honey, somebody's at the door, and it was a cop, and it was that creepy guy that she was following. He went and reversed it and said that she was harassing him. And then the cop's like, I want you guys to settle this right now. So the guy was real creepy looking. He just had this real stone face on him. And then he was like, he put his hand out, and she was looking down at him, and then she shook his hand. And then they went to this party, and then she was drinking, and then her husband said, hey, honey, come here. And then he introduced her to her little work crew. And then they all said, oh, you're just as good. She was a very attractive lady. But anyway, they start talking about that accident that happened when that woman got her head cut off prior. And then they were talking in Romanian, and then she was like, well, what did you say? He said, well, my wife was thinking that, this guy is stalking her. But then when her wife was listening, they was making these Romanian cracks, and wisecracks, and she goes, well, what did you say? And she said in a roundabout way, he goes, well, my wife, he said to these people in Romania, well, my wife was worried about this guy, but I think the only thing she needs to worry about is a spider. So she got mad, and she goes, well, that's what you think. So she got mad and slammed the drink down, and then she stormed out, and she got on the subway, and he was trying to catch her, and then when she left, he was trying to tell her, he said, hey, I'm tired, man. I'm just burnt out trying to support you, and I'm working all these hours, and you're acting all weird and everything like that. So she's like, all right, whatever. So she gets on the subway. When she goes to the subway to go home, that's when she runs into that creepy guy, and that creepy guy sits in front of her. And that creepy guy said, hey, I watched my dad, and, he's real sick. Because before she knocked on the door, there was an older guy that was there. Come find out he was staying with his dad. But then he said, I'm taking care of my dad. He said, so I stare out the window. He goes, and then when you wave, I'll just wave back. Then she was like, really? But the whole time she was talking to him, he had this grocery bag, and he was talking to her. He's so creepy. She was sitting there, and she was just looking, and she looked down at the bag, and more and more she looked at the bag, it looked like there was a head in there. So then when she goes home, she finally goes home because that subway stalled. And then that's when he walked down there, and she was looking all creepy. And she's like, why this? He goes, I'm explaining to you why this stopped, because sometimes there's animals on the track or there's somebody working on the track. And she goes, how long it take to get going? Because she was freaked out on it. And he said maybe 2 or 3 minutes, depending on if they can catch the dog or whatever's going on. So then he started explaining to her about how he watches his dad, blah, blah. So then she's listening to him talk, and the whole time she's looking, and then she started realizing there's like a head silhouette in there. It looks like there was a person's head in there. Anyway, when she goes home, she decides to start packing her stuff. Well, then she hears music next door, which is her friend, which is that girl, which is the one that had a drink with her. And earlier, see, she had a drink with that girl, and that girl was like, would you like to have a drink with me? She goes, yeah. So she goes in there to have a drink with her, and then while they're drinking, her boyfriend knocks on the door, and he bangs on the door, and he says some mean things in Romanian. And she was sitting on the couch. She goes, should I be worried? She goes, no. She goes, he gets like that. She goes, I broke up with him a couple weeks ago. She goes, wow, it sounds like he's mad. She goes, he's a sweetheart, really. She goes, but I told him if he ever crossed the line, she goes, oh, like that. Then she just drank a wine. And the French lady, the Romanian lady says, I'm serious. She goes, I told him if he crossed the line, she goes, I'd shoot him. And she goes, look down there. And this is the key to this story. This is the key to the whole thing. There was a drawer down there that had a gun in there, and it was loaded. And she pulls it out, and it was a gun. And then she goes, yep, I'll shoot him, for real. And then she took her foot and shut it. Well, now we're at the climax, because I want to tie it in with the gun. So then, when she comes home from that subway, she hears that music. And so, because she's been looking for this girl for a couple of days that she had that drink with, I just told you. So the girl, because earlier, her boyfriend, she finally met her boyfriend. He said, do you know where so-and-so's at? She goes, no, I ain't seen her in a couple of days either. Because that was the guy who was knocking on the door that she said that if he ever he's a sweetheart. Well, that was the first time she ever met him. She's like, you haven't seen her either? She goes, no, she was supposed to stop over anyway. She talked him into going up there to find out who was upstairs in that apartment, and they couldn't come down. Anyway, the climax of this thing is she went to go, let's fast forward. So she went to go and actually go to that girl's house because she found out that there was music playing. So then she sits there and she opens up the door, and then she walks in, her head's cut off. And then this bag, that guy had that bag earlier on the subway, because, they just was on the subway like maybe 30 minutes ago. He puts the bag over her face, and then when he hits her in the head, when she wakes up, she's knocked out, she's on this bed, and he's like, don't breathe too hard or you suffocate. He said, I put enough holes in there where you can breathe. Well, then he takes the bag off, because her husband comes over, and her husband walks in, seeing that he was packing. He's like, oh crap. Well, then she's next door, and he's got her, on the bed, this guy, the same guy that she was paranoid of. And he said, don't scream, because he had this real sharp knife. And when she tried to scream, he slit her throat right here where she couldn't yell. So then he drags her out on this thing, and she starts bleeding out. Well, I thought she was done by then. I was like, damn, I guess she is going to die. Well, she was in that girl's apartment, and she had remembered that girl told her there was a gun in there. So she started going towards the gun, but she couldn't make it. So the guy watches over her, and I said, it seemed like that guy would stab her more because he had just cut her friend's head off. So she lays down, and she looks like she's about to pass out. He lays down beside her, and just looks at her, and they just look at each other's face, and they just literally look at each other. Well, then he decides, that's it. But then when he gets up, he looks up, he sees a little girl looking down. So he thinks that little girl seen him do what he did. So he looks up, he's like, oh crap. So he goes in the bathroom, washes his hands off, and then he puts his coat on. At this time, her husband's walking out of the apartment, and when he walks out of the apartment, he walks out of the apartment at the same time. When he stands at the entrance of this next door neighbor, the husband who's been doubting her the whole time, was like, what the hell? And then he says, hey, like this. And he tried to walk fast, and all of a sudden, man, he got shot in the back. Bow! And then he hit the wall, he turned around, and it went bow! And the gunshots in this movie look really real. And the way that he played himself getting shot, he fell down, and the blood splattered on her husband in the hallway because he thought maybe he is doing something to his wife. And man, some people came out of the apartment and they seen the guy up against the wall, because she shot him dead. And then when she walked, it panned off and showed his wife, and she was bleeding real bad. She remembered that gun being in that drawer, and then she walked out. And then when she walked out, he was standing there because the blood splattered on his face. He was standing there like this, and then she just looked at him like that. It's like, I told you. And that was the end of the movie. So anyway, I didn't want it to be this long. But anyway, this is a very good movie. Shot very well. Great movie. There was this. You know why I'm so happy? It's because I found a movie that was clean. You didn't see no butt cheeks, no nothing. She was in the shower and it showed water just falling off her blades of her shoulders. That was it. You seen them making love, but you seen them kind of take their clothes off, but not get too butt naked. It was no unnecessary sex scenes. There was no men in there kissing each other, no women in there. It was a clean, well-made suspense horror movie. God bless, take care, and we'll catch you in the next video. We'll see you.